If you've been watching Rick and Morty for long enough, there's a quiet feeling you've probably experienced, even if you never put it into words. It's not that the show became bad, it's not even that it lost its edge. It's something more subtle than that. The episodes still work, the concepts are still clever, the jokes still land, but somehow, they don't stay with you the same way anymore. Older episodes linger, they leave a strange emotional residue. You remember how they made you feel uncomfortable, hollow, amused in a way that almost hurt. Newer episodes, on the other hand, feel like they slide off. You watch them, you enjoy them, and then they're gone, clean, contained, safe. And that's where the unease begins, because Rick and Morty was never supposed to feel safe. At its core, the show built its identity on a brutal idea. Nothing matters, and that freedom is terrifying. Infinite universes meant infinite replacements. Death wasn't final. Loss was negotiable. Meaning itself was optional. For a long time, that philosophy worked, not because it was comforting, but because it was honest. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, almost politely. And the unsettling part is this: what if that shift wasn't a mistake? What if it was the story? To understand that possibility, we have to return to an episode that most people remember as clever, but harmless. The fear hole. On the surface, it's simple. A hole that shows you your deepest fears. Not monsters, not jump scares. Internal dread. Emotional exposure. Rick enters, faces himself, and walks out. End of episode. Status quo restored. Except if you look closely, something never fully resets, and that's where this story really begins. After the fear hole, Rick doesn't dramatically change. There's no grand speech, no clear redemption arc, no visible collapse. Instead, his behavior softens in ways that are easy to overlook. He becomes more domestic, more present, more willing to tolerate things he once mocked or destroyed. Therapy, routine, family dynamics. At first glance, this looks like growth. Fans even celebrated it. Rick is evolving, Rick is healing, but something doesn't line up. Every time Rick seems to move forward emotionally, the world around him refuses to follow. Consequences appear, then quietly dissolve. Trauma is introduced, then gently erased. Events that should permanently alter characters end up feeling temporary, reversible, almost weightless. And it happens again, and again, and again. Morty experiences years of psychological suffering inside simulations, and returns functional. Beth faces existential crises that should fracture her identity, and stabilizes. Even Rick's greatest conflicts resolve without leaving lasting scars. The universe keeps cushioning the impact, which raises an uncomfortable question. Why does reality feel padded? Not broken, not chaotic, soft, as if the environment itself is designed to absorb emotional shock. Rick even acknowledges this indirectly, through meta-jokes, through dismissive lines about classic adventures and nostalgia, as if he senses that something about his world has become artificially stable, but can't quite articulate why. And then there's Evil Morty, the only character who fundamentally rejects the system. He doesn't want comfort, he doesn't want belonging, he doesn't want the family loop. He wants out, not of the universe, of the structure. And suddenly a new question emerges. What if Evil Morty isn't rebelling against Rick, but against the environment Rick exists in? To understand what might be happening, we have to reconsider what the fear hole actually represents. The fear hole doesn't punish you. It doesn't attack you. It confronts you with emotional truth, and then offers relief. And that relief is the dangerous part. Rick's greatest fear was never death. He's died countless times. It was never the multiverse collapsing. He thrives in chaos. Rick's real fear is connection, caring deeply and losing permanently. The fear hole presents that fear, and then subtly removes its consequences. It offers a reality where Rick can care, suffer, and struggle without ever facing irreversible loss. A world where emotional stakes exist, but only up to a point. And once you notice this, the pattern becomes hard to ignore. Rick tries to withdraw from adventure, but adventure follows him. Rick seeks simplicity, but chaos stays controlled. Rick defeats Rick Prime, the defining antagonist of his life, and the emotional fallout is minimal. That moment should have shattered him. Instead, it barely ripples, which suggests something terrifying. Perhaps Rick Prime was never the final threat. Perhaps the real antagonist is the environment Rick refuses to leave. A constructed emotional space, a psychological enclosure, a reality optimized for survivability. And Evil Morty? He sees the walls. He understands that freedom means accepting that some losses don't reset, that some stories end without comfort, that some pain isn't narratively efficient, and he chooses that anyway. Rick doesn't. So here's the final question, the one that quietly reframes everything you've been watching. If Rick suddenly realized with absolute certainty that he never truly left the fear hole, would he actually want to escape? Because escape doesn't mean more chaos. It means less control. It means accepting that some endings don't reset, that some losses don't fade after the credits roll, that some pain isn't narratively convenient. Leaving would mean returning to a universe where love costs everything again. And maybe that's why Rick and Morty feels different now. Not because it lost its edge, not because the writers ran out of ideas, but because Rick found something he never had before. A place where he can care, without bleeding out. A world that looks like growth, feels like healing, but might actually be emotional containment. And if that's true, then the show isn't stuck creatively. It's exactly where Rick chose to stay. Which leaves us with one last uncomfortable thought. Maybe the real question isn't whether Rick will ever leave the fear hole. Maybe the question is whether we even want him to. Because once he leaves, the story can't protect him anymore. And neither can we. Pause. If this theory made you see the series differently, even just a little, consider subscribing. Not for answers, but for more questions like this. Because Rick and Morty has never been about solving the mystery. It's about sitting with the doubt and realizing what that doubt says about us. And that debate, that's where the story actually continues.